defying the laws of gravity, reckless or revolutionary, insanity or twisted genius. Technology and innovation give birth to the most mind-blowing and perilous sports on the planet. Now, extreme sports gadgets on Modern Marvels. What do these remarkable feats have in common? None of them would be possible without the specialized equipment that has evolved and improved over the years. And like life itself, it all started here, in the ocean. If there's one historical element that inspired the no-holds-barred mentality of what's now considered extreme sports, it would have to be the ancient Hawaiian sport of surfing.
Surfing has been such a huge inspiration to the world. From a little island in the Pacific, that it's influenced skiers to become snowboarders, water skiers to become wakeboarders. We got skateboarding, and these are all children of surfing.
Today, thank technology for making it possible to ride 60-foot waves with nothing but a surfboard and an iron will. Although it's not clear exactly where and when surfing began, there's no doubt that the ancient sport of hi'inalu, or wave sliding, was practiced as far back as the 2nd century AD in the area now known as the Hawaiian Islands. By carving a slab of wood from a tree and adding a bit of lateral ingenuity, the early surf pioneers turned an unfriendly element into an ocean playground.
The fascinating thing is the building of a surfboard. And when you really think about it, it's a toy. This toy had ritual, it had incredible significance to the culture because they really valued their recreational time. And as such, they valued the tools and the toys that they used, to achieve that.
The ancient Hawaiians had two types of surfboards. The alaia was a commoner's board that was short, thin, and wide. The olos were reserved for the royal class. These regal boards were longer, some measuring up to 26 feet, and much heavier, weighing approximately 150 pounds. Designed for surfing bigger waves, these boards were extremely hard to control. At the dawn of the 20th century, modern surfers took the ancient designs and started experimenting with board shapes and technology that could allow their skills to grow. In the early 30s, a curious young surfer from the mainland named Tom Blake came to Hawaii and began studying the way surfboards were built.
Tom Blake was really the first true surfboard designer and innovator. He couldn't help but looking at these boards think, do they have to be so heavy? He actually came up with a design where he built a hollow board. It was created from marine ply. It was still the same length, but they were hollow.
By introducing the world's first hollow board, Blake created a much lighter board that made surfing more accessible and gave surfers more control.
So suddenly, you had this board that was literally half the weight of the contemporary surfboard, and suddenly people realized, hey, lightness really is the key to performance in surfing. It's been the most enduring innovation in surfing, and that has been the pursuit of lightness.
This groundbreaking advancement prompted other surfboard builders to experiment with all shapes, sizes, weights, and materials. And in 1935, Blake was at the cutting edge of surfboard improvement again.
Tom Blake, so the story goes, was walking on the beach one day and he came across an overturned powerboat that had washed ashore. And there on the bottom was that little stabilizing, what was called a skeg. And he thought, if it works for a boat, maybe it'd work for a surfboard. And he prized off that skeg, went home, put it on his board, paddled right out, and surfing never was the same again.
After centuries of surfing on steerless planks, the fin acted like a rudder, using the resistance of water to provide lateral stability and far greater maneuverability. The next technological advance occurred just after World War II. The work of chemists searching for waterproof glues during the war led to the creation of fiberglass and resin. Preston Pete Peterson was one of the first to experiment with these materials. Later, with the introduction of polyurethane foam in the late 50s, boards got even lighter and easier to manufacture. Consequently, surfing's popularity skyrocketed. Surfing went from an obscure coastal pastime to a multi-million-dollar industry. The art of surfboard building, called shaping, appeared as hundreds of surf specialists attempted to create a superior board. In the late 60s, the next major design advancement took place, as long boards were replaced with shorter boards, wide at the tail and narrow at the nose. These pioneering innovations made the newer, more aggressive wave attack and slash type of surfing style possible.
Boards begin to shrink and minimalize the amount of volume, because the less volume you take with you out there in the water, the quicker your turns become on the wave, the more places you can go on that face of that wave. You can imagine if you were just surfing on your bare feet, you know, you can make direction changes just about instantly.
Al Merrick is a legendary shaper who was one of the first to use computers as part of the shaping process. Merrick was looking for ways to reproduce specific designs that could be applied for a mass market.
Now the boards are all done off the computer now, all cut. They almost look like a ruffled potato chip. The nice thing about the computer is not only can we replicate, but we can tell the computer how big we want a particular design, how wide, how thick, and it'll cut it for us. We use a series of templates to lay out what we want on the board. This particular tail is going to be a squash tail. Then I have a series of sanding blocks, sanding pads, varying things to work on the board. This smooths it out, just takes the ruffles out, you can see. This I'm just thinning the nose down, just basically aesthetics, getting it the way I want. Then I personally sign and number each board that I'll be shaping during the day. It'll be the last part of the process for me in here. And put the person's name on it, and then generally put the dimensions of the board so that they know what they're writing.
A fairly recent development in the sport's evolution is toe-in big wave surfing.
It didn't really catch on until the early 90s, where a trio of surfers from Hawaii, Laird Hamilton, Derek Dorner, and Buzzy Kerbox, decided to go out to this outer reef on the North Shore of Oahu, and they towed into some really big waves behind an inflatable Zodiac, and they really started exploring the potential.
The jet ski soon replaced the Zodiac as the towing method of choice.
The waves gonna start getting gnarly right here. Oh,
And toe-in surfing was here to stay.
oh my God! Oh, it's raining!
I think that the original concept of toe-in surfing really kind of fell in the hands of summertime, no surf, getting pulled around behind boats, and then realized we could catch big waves, and then realized we could put ourselves in conditions where normally you couldn't surf, and it's evolved now to where there's very few conditions that we can't go out in.
In the past, longboards helped riders paddle out to catch waves. Now that they could be towed out into the larger waves, boards got even shorter. Riding enormous and violent waves required more board modifications. Straps were added to help surfers stay attached while attempting bold new maneuvers. And weight became an issue once again.
They found a heavier board actually works better. I mean, it dampens the chop. It doesn't fly free when they hit chop. And in the ultimate sort of full circle, Laird Hamilton, who's considered by all to be the greatest big wave surfer in the world today, some of his best toe-in surfboards are made from solid redwood.
It doesn't matter what time in history you're in. It matters more about the person and what they want, because where there's a will, there's a way. And you'll always find a way to push it somehow.
So he has gone back to the Olo. He's gone back to the Elite Ease board. So it's sort of a funny twist, as they've gotten much more technologically advanced, and in some ways, they went back.
Now surfing has taken a dramatic technological step into the future. Even after seeing it, you still may have trouble believing it. Enter the airboard, also known as the foil board. Laird Hamilton, the tow-in pioneer, was looking at some footage of a water skiing device called an air chair, consisting of a chair mounted on a board with a hydrofoil below. At the right speed, this underwater blade would lift the rider about 3 feet above the water.
In the pursuit of trying to ride waves differently, I saw one of those air chairs. And I go, we got to get one of those. So we got the thing, and we went and we tried it. We sat on it. We tried it on the first day. And the very first day we went, no, this is not right. We need to be standing, because surfers don't sit, we stand.
Lo and behold, he found that with the right trajectory and with the right weight, and if they angled that hydrofoil properly, he could rise up out of the water. Surface conditions won't matter.
Like an airplane, the hydrofoil creates lift through a current. Instead of wind, the airboard uses water. And when that water current passes over the top of the airboard's strut or wing, it creates lift, causing the device to rise.
He really innovated the first truly new way to surf since King Kamehameha on his redwood board.
For wave riding, it's a dream. It's a little bit like a glider. It's not a fighter jet. My boards for the big waves are like fighter jets. They're designed to go a lot faster, and they're more forgiving when you're going really fast. The airboard, it's a little not so forgiving, a little more sensitive, but it's a dream.
It's so early to tell, but a foil board may go down as the biggest innovation in surfing history since Tom Blake put a fin on a surfboard.
The foil board may have put surfing into the air, but with another boost from technology, the ancient sport of kings would find its place on the ground. Wetsuit and surf equipment innovator Jack O'Neill lost an eye while testing one of the first surf leashes that tethers the surfer to his board. Jack's signature eye patch became his company logo, now recognized the world over. Extreme sports gadgets will return on Modern Marvels. This wheel caused a revolution. It's made of an organic chemical compound called polyurethane, or urethane, and it forever changed the world of extreme sports. But things weren't always so smooth. Back in the roaring 20s, roller skating was the extreme sport of its day. Kids soon discovered new ways to cruise around on metal wheels.
Skateboarding basically started back in the 20s and 30s. But they weren't skateboards at that time. They would basically use a crate of some sort of fruit box, metal wheels on a 2x4, and they would doll them up. And these were skate cars, scooters, skate crates.
Steel wheels weren't going to give you much traction. And, when you're out there on the, that cold, hard asphalt, traction is everything.
Despite the hazards, skateboarding's popularity grew. Riders looked for better wheels. In the 50s, various composite or clay wheels replaced steel, but the results were less than impressive.
Basically, you're riding Fred Flintstone type wheels. They're cement. They're like riding cement wheels on cement surface, so it was literally like ice skating. There was no traction. There was no forgiveness if you went over a bump. If you went over a bump, your board would stop and lock. The equipment wasn't really designed for what we wanted to do, which was to do what they do in the water and surfing, but on the concrete.
Finally, in 1973, the revolution occurred. For the first time, polyurethane was applied to skateboard wheels. Polyurethane, when liquefied, can be molded into various shapes. The unique properties of polyurethane turned out to be perfect for wheels. It has good abrasion resistance, making it durable. More importantly, polyurethane gives an excellent grip with the ground and provides solid traction and control. Also, polyurethane has a very high resiliency, or rebound, which allows the wheels to be extremely fast and smooth. What's most impressive is that a polyurethane wheel's strength, grip, and speed can all be modified for specific results, depending on how it's chemically produced. As the polyurethane wheel turns, the section that is in contact with the ground is flattened a bit by the weight of the skater pressing down, a condition engineers call deformation. It returns to its round shape very quickly.
Look, the polyurethane wheel was like the Conestoga wagon compared to the Ford car, the Model T car. It changed everything, and it changed everything literally overnight. All of a sudden now we could ride on vertical walls. You know, you could jump out in the air, you could go faster downhill, you could pop over curbs, you could do so many things. You could go down staircases that you could never do on a conventional clay wheel. And what that did is it really gave birth to what has become modern skateboarding.
I just got into skating as urethane was the thing. It enabled us to do things that were probably only dreamt of with the other equipment.
I can't describe to you what it was like to spend 10 years click-clacking your way down the sidewalk on these hard rubber wheels, you know, click, 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 to suddenly get on a skateboard with urethane wheels. They were silent. They rolled along silently. The grip, the traction, you just couldn't believe it. It was almost unimaginable.
The wheels not only provided a technological breakthrough, but a psychological one as well. Armed with confidence, attitude, and a piece of equipment that riders could push to new limits, skaters were now poised to attempt daring new maneuvers. And thanks to the California drought of the 70s, they discovered a perfect outdoor laboratory for their newfound skating experiments.
The government told the people of Los Angeles, you cannot fill your pools with water. Hence, there was hundreds of pools in the LA basin lying empty. And we now had this new wheel and these new skateboards to try out on these pools all over the Los Angeles basin.
With their skating universe dramatically expanded, skateboarders started to rethink every aspect of board design.
All of a sudden, when the urethane wheel came out, we weren't surfing anymore. We were skateboarding. And so the board started getting wider to accommodate our feet because we started doing much more, I guess you could call dangerous tricks that required more grip, that required more planing surface on the board.
Besides board shape, riders also found that wider trucks, which hold the wheels to the board, gave them more ability to pivot than the narrow skate truck.
The big breakthrough that we invented was riding vertical. That was the big thing that we did. Skateboarding invented the technique, or the concept of flat bottom, because we took a swimming pool like this and we made a half pipe out of it, but not just made a half pipe. We pulled the thing apart. And the space in here is what created everything today.
Basically, adding flat to transition gave us a little setup time, but also gave us two pumps, whereas one U structure gives you one continuous pump, and you don't get as much speed that way. So actually adding flat, you get two pumps, and you get that much higher. And the construction, the materials have come so far as well. The original ramps were basically wood stolen from construction sites and plywood. Now there's literally surfaces created for skate ramps. There's a surface called Skate Light that's more of a compound. It looks like masonite, but at its core, it's more of a plastic. And it'll survive the weather, and it lasts a lot longer.
Since speed is like oxygen to extreme sports athletes, it's not surprising that kids started exploring new ways to get their personal adrenaline fix. They discovered they could achieve a new level of velocity by lying horizontally on their boards.
There was a race in Signal Hill in 1976, and everybody showed up on stand-up boards, and a normal way to ride a skateboard. And a guy named Sam Puggio showed up because there was a loophole in the rules that didn't say you had to stand up. And they had to make a class right then because nobody could ever hang standing up aerodynamically with a guy laying down. That sparked everybody to want to lay down.
And the street luge was born. Although early street luges were fast, even with their polyurethane wheels, the boards didn't allow any real control.
You couldn't turn these things. I mean, people were crashing in a straight line. They weren't made to handle, they were just made to go fast and straight like a race car. So I just kept crashing and building stuff until I finally figured out how to make that thing turn.
After a lot of very painful trial and error, Hickey discovered that the key to turning was setting the wheelbases further back on the boards.
Once I learned how to go through turns, that was a whole different ballgame then. You know, I mean, the sport just exploded after that.
Riders also began experimenting with constructing boards with lighter materials.
I used honeycomb, and I decided that bolts weigh a lot, so I had everything welded, nothing was bolted. I mean, I did everything you could possibly do to see how light I could possibly go.
Lugers continued experimenting with anything and everything that might give them more speed, from board size to helmet design. The one constant, however, was the wheel.
If a urethane wheel was never ever invented, ever, skateboarding wouldn't be the sport it is. And street luge and downhill racing, there is just no possible way. I mean, even today, the wheel is the most important equipment you have because you can't build a wheel.
Extreme athletes seek out the best wheel manufacturers to obtain optimum performance. And at And Industries, engineers create a collaborative environment.
It usually breaks down to how fast can I go, how much grip do I have, and how long is that wheel going to last. Those are the three criteria that we really start with.
In the design stage, engineers get input from riders to determine which wheel characteristics will be best suited for each athlete.
A downhill inline skater might come in and he might be talking about how he's coming into a chicane and he's having trouble holding an edge. He might use a terminology like that and say, I'm on my right edge, I can't hold it, I'm scrubbing. But essentially what it translates to is a lack of grip. And then we have to start to adjust that. We can change the performance of not only the urethane, but the whole wheel system. That really is our job, to convert that language into ultimately the right product.
Once he's got that right product, the designer now puts it through a series of computer-simulated tests that measure the wheel's performance.
The only thing you can't manufacture yourself. So without urethane and the technology of urethane, none of us would be even sitting here.
Although the innovation of the polyurethane wheel helped create the extreme sports revolution, other sports thrived by losing wheels altogether. The rider's feet are the brakes in street luge. Because most of the rubber is burned off braking at such high speeds, shoes often have to be replaced after each race. Extreme sports gadgets will return on Modern Marvels. Snowboarding is all about freedom. Riders can choose between high-speed adrenaline fixes, complex tricks, or enjoying a smooth, relaxing descent. Inspired by skateboarding and surfing, snowboarding quickly evolved from being a curiosity to a full-fledged multi-million-dollar industry and an official Olympic event. The modern snowboard has its roots in a wacky 1965 contraption called the Snurfer, the brainchild of Sherman Poppin.
Sherman Poppin saw his daughter standing on a ski sideways trying to surf it, and that's how he came up with the idea. This here is the very first model ever made, yellow, black thin lines. Staples, cheap hardware staples they just put in to hold your boots or your tennis shoes or whatever you're wearing to the board. No bindings yet, as they do nowadays. Very crude.
Essentially a wheelless skateboard, steered with a handheld rope, the Snurfer was mass-produced and sold as a children's toy.
How it came to be that the Snurfer, the humble Snurfer, gave birth to the huge sport of snowboarding today is one of the great stories in extreme sports. But once again, the root of the desire was surfing.
In the late 70s, while many were laughing off the Snurfer as a kiddie novelty, a young surfer named Jake Burton saw the device's potential and started thinking about ways to modify the board's design and improve performance. His first boards were made of laminated hardwood. He also added straps to keep the rider's feet on the board. Although the boards were a definite improvement over the Snurfer, something still seemed to be missing in the design.
The introduction of the metal edge, like a ski, allows the edge to grab the snow and allows you to carve into the snow, hence the term holding an edge and making a turn. It's really one of the biggest innovations, I think, in the evolution of snowboards, because you can actually make an S-turn, like on a ski, and you can be in control.
Boards quickly evolved into highly sophisticated powder boards with high back step-in bindings and bases made of waxy material called P-Tex. When you put a P-Tex coated board on snow, microscopic beads of water melt between the two, providing a surface like ball bearings on which the board slides. Snowboard manufacturing became a high-tech process, involving over 30 people in each board's creation.
As long as we're progressing board construction, the boards will get stronger, and more people will do it, and less boards will break.
State-of-the-art equipment plus crazed snowboarders equals jaw-dropping thrills.
More and more kids and professional riders are getting better on these things, and there's no limit to what you can do, whether it's on a handrail or a jump or on some untouched mountain somewhere.
But what about times when there's no snow or surf? Enter extreme wakeboarding, a sport that's a combination of snowboarding, water skiing, and surfing. There are now over 40 wakeboard companies and over 1 million riders worldwide. But wakeboarding's history truly began in 1922, when an intrepid water adventurer named Ralph Samuelson strapped 2 pine boards onto his feet and took off behind a motorboat. In a relatively short time, water skiing grew into a family activity, as well as a competitive sport. In 1985, West Coast surfer Tony Finn invented the original wakeboard, the Skurfer, a hybrid water ski and surfboard.
One day we just decided to start making some boards that was like a combination between a surfboard and a water ski, and that was the Skurfer. And so we just were doing it for fun, and that's how the sport started in 1985.
Although Finn was making the boards for himself and his friends, it soon became clear his invention might have mass appeal.
What happened was a lot of people would come up to our boat and be like, "Whoa, what is that? Can we buy one of those, or where'd you buy it," or whatever. And then I thought, well, because I was like going to college and delivering pizza, and I was like, whatever, maybe I should try this.
The boards were hard to control by anyone other than the most experienced riders.
The construction technique that we used in the manufacturing process made the board kind of thick, and so it was pretty buoyant. So some people had a problem getting up on it, and that was one of the main obstacles to growing the sport.
About the same time Finn was outputting Skurfers, his future partner, Jimmy Redman, was designing his own wakeboards in Texas. But his models had their own problems.
The first boards that we made were actually made in a kind of high-end process, but it was not durable enough for the rigors of wakeboarding once you started jumping.
Things started to improve once wakeboards switched to a more advanced manufacturing method.
Skurfers were made in a process called rotational molding, and the process makes the boards kind of thick, like a surfboard. And when you really want to do high-performance tricks, you need a board that's thinner, like we have now, so you can really carve it. Eventually, we were able to switch manufacturing techniques into a compression molded.
Compression molding is a process where foam, fiberglass, and resin are compressed with heat and pressure to produce boards that are extremely strong and neutrally buoyant. The first compression molded boards arrived in the early 90s. The same process used to make snowboards, the new technique provided the structural integrity the boards needed to withstand jumps. And because they were easier to control, riders could stand up without difficulty. As a result, wakeboarding became much more accessible and sparked the sport's massive growth. Other advancements were soon to follow.
When you want to talk about innovations in wakeboard technology, the most important one, I think, is the invention of the twin tip.
With wakeboarding, when it started to move in the direction where people wanted to ride switch stance and become more like skateboarders and snowboarders, where you would spend a large portion of the time either landing with the board in tail first or approaching the wake tail first. A directional board doesn't allow you to do that. You have no control on the nose, you don't have enough tail rocker. So that leap needed to happen, and that's where the twin tip came from.
Today, most pro wakeboards are made of aluminum honeycomb or carbon graphite.
We use different exotic materials to make them super light, And some of the innovations are we have built-in fins on the side of the boards so that you can ride with no center fin, because a big thing in wakeboarding now is going on sliders, and so you need a flat spot in the center of the board, but you still need the board to be able to turn really sharp.
Innovators continue to use technology to push the limits of the sport, to enable wakeboarders to go faster, farther, and higher than ever before.
I just think that it's just going to keep on growing and growing and growing because it is so fun, but it's also an extreme sport. So when you get good, you can do crazy, cool stuff.
But what kind of equipment do you need when you want to do crazy stuff in midair? On May 22, 2001, Stefan Gatt became the first person to snowboard down Mount Everest. Extreme sports gadgets will return on Modern Marvels. Hurling yourself out of a perfectly good airplane to perform aerial stunts requires a special breed of madness. With ties to snowboarding, surfing, and of course skydiving, sky surfing defines the modern extreme sport. People have been jumping out of airplanes almost since the dawn of flight.
Sky surfing began in France back in 1989, I would imagine. I saw this old video of a guy who had just jumped out of an airplane with a snowboard, but he was falling belly to earth with the board kind of just tucked up, his knees bent, kind of tucked up on his back. So he never stood on it, but he was out there with the board, and I think that was the very first time that someone thought, wow, you can take a board of some sort out of an airplane.
By the early 80s, skydivers in America began experimenting with boards of their own.
It's such a weird sensation to be standing in the atmosphere, you know, and it feels like you're standing on solid ground, because once you reach terminal velocity, the board is on that 100-mile-per-hour cushion of air, and it's solid.
By the early 90s, video of sky surfers started appearing in the media. And soon, sky surfing became the hippest, coolest form of extreme entertainment. The early skyboards were shaped like snowboards, but heavy and made of plywood. Later, many opted for a honeycomb base in order to lighten the load and gain more control. In the mid-90s, a number of riders made the switch to a surfboard-like foam core.
Tom Stanton, the guy that shaped my boards, he was the first guy to start using a foam core because he's a surfboard shaper. And he changed the sport. And he made this really thin, light board that was just amazing. And it spun so fast because it was so thin, but it was still strong enough to stay rigid, and you can't do that with wood.
Skyboards are equipped with a releasable binding system. This cutaway system becomes critical in situations where a sky surfer loses control of his board.
When you start spinning, and that's usually the time you realize you have to cut the board away, as soon as you start spinning with that thing, it's like a propeller. It takes off. You spin so fast that your body just gets stretched out, and it's impossible to reach, and you're just trying to bring your arms to the center of your body and find the handle. As soon as you get that handle, all of a sudden everything changes. You slow down, and you wake up, and then you kind of realize, okay, I'm back in free fall.
Sky surfers don't work alone. Camera flyers take the plunge with them, recording every contorted move along the way for the public and the competition judges.
Without a camera flyer, there's nobody sky surfing. There's no way to show that you even did it. It's just a big story without the camera. And they are 50%, sometimes 60% of what makes that video look perfect when you get judged. They are sort of the unspoken heroes a lot of times with sky surfing.
Camera flyers have their own specially designed equipment.
The camera flyers are developing all kinds of weird stuff. They take still shots a lot with these really nice still cameras, and they have these little mouthpiece things where they actually use their tongue to activate the camera. You're falling, you're dealing with a wind tunnel effect, and that's what's controlling all of your movements. Probably the closest thing I could think of would be what you do when you're swimming underwater, when you're a kid, and you go underwater and you flip around and you do stuff because you're using this resistance that's all around you, and that's the air.
Sky surfing may look surreal, but But there's probably nothing as jaw-dropping as seeing a man fly completely on his own. Just put him in a wingsuit. The wingsuits are custom built, made of zero-porosity material that prevents air from passing through. The aerodynamic suits have inflatable wings that function as air intakes. The air flows through the intakes and is trapped within the wings, helping them remain sturdy while enabling riders to fly. The wings contain ribs that form internal channels. When air flows into them, they become pressurized.
The wing actually inflates and takes shape, just like an airplane wing has a shape. This wing has a shape when it's inflated. And from that shape, from your body position and etc., it allows you to generate lift using gravity as a vehicle to produce speed. Your whole body from your head to your toe becomes a wing.
Conventional skydivers fall vertically for about 60 seconds at approximately 120 miles per hour. With the wingsuits, the riders can fly for over 2 minutes, falling as slowly as 35 miles per hour vertically, and gliding forward, reaching speeds exceeding 130 miles per hour. In optimal conditions, riders can fly as far as 3 miles before deploying their chute.
It's very quiet. It's as loud as sticking your head out the door of the car doing about 40 miles an hour. You can speak to each other. You can talk and say, I'm going to go left, you go right. Yeah, okay, no problem. It's very serene. It's smooth and quiet and fun, and it lasts a really, really long time. The closest thing a human being will ever be to Superman.
As some athletes use their extreme equipment to conquer the skies, others look to the mountaintop for challenges beyond the realm of sanity. Sky surfers use an automatic activation device, or AAD, a computerized barometric sensing unit that opens the reserve parachute at a preset altitude if it determines a jumper is still plummeting at high speed. Extreme sports gadgets will return on Modern Marvels. Modern mountain biking was born in the late 70s, when riders in Northern California went off-road, pedaling up mountains and descending at high speeds. They soon realized that their old single-speed bikes could be improved with modern cycling technology.
They used to call it the repack, because when they get down to the bottom, the jolting and the dirt and the mud and everything, they'd have to repack the bearings of their axles, after every race. So it was called the repack.
The repack crew realized that if they could take the modern technology found on a road bike and apply it to their cruisers, they could get up the mountain easier and keep their bikes intact on the way down. Soon, the mountain bike was born. At Rocky Mountain Bikes in Vancouver, British Columbia, state-of-the-art hand-built bikes are designed, manufactured, and tested. They're equipped with the latest in carbon fiber composite handlebars, aluminum alloy frame tubing, custom tires, and a high-tech link suspension system.
This is where ideas get started. A lot of times there's engineers bantering and coming in from rides and stuff like that with ideas, and this is where it kind of evolves into something.
The designer then uses the computer to come up with a design that can be translated to the production line.
It's parametric modeling, which means it all is interlinked. Each piece has to fit together. So in actuality, each of these pieces that you see actually have to be designed individually. So your top tube, which is this tube here, I can actually take that out of the actual model and it's its own entity. And I assemble it the same way you'd build a bike, in reality.
Once the blueprints are completed, they're taken to the production floor.
Basically what we try to do here is we're creating kind of like a puzzle effect. And before the welders actually get the material, they get them cut up. We basically want to make it fit together like a puzzle. So the tighter the fit, the stronger the bike.
We'll take that drawing, we'll manipulate it to suit our needs. We'll change the dimensions of it to G-code. G-code is what the machine reads. That's so it can understand movements straight lines, diagonal lines, arcs. Right now, you're seeing what the tool is doing. It's showing you everything that every tool is going to do in the whole program. We watch for any strange lines, anything that it's not supposed to be doing, incorrect arcs.
Once the various components are approved and completed, they're mitered and welded to the frames. Then they're heat treated in giant ovens to artificially age the aluminum for strength and durability. Wheels are carefully assembled with hubs, rims, and hand-laced spokes. Each wheel is carefully tensioned, trued, and stress-relieved to ensure the most reliable ride. Factory testing is one thing. The bikes get their real trials by some of today's top riders on Vancouver's famous North Shore.
And you gotta have complete faith in your equipment, because we're doing cliffs now that are upwards of 20-30 feet on a regular basis, and when you come down, you don't want your equipment to fail.
Say with quite confidence that there's no way we could be doing the sport at the level that we are doing it at without the all the advances in technology, because we were there from the beginning of, not the beginning of the sport, but the beginning of the levels being really pushed.
Speaking of levels being pushed on a bike, BMX freestyle is another way to abuse your equipment, not to mention your body. For Matt Hoffman, the need for better equipment led him to start his own company.
The sport was really putting pressure on and stress on the bike that no one ever knew that it would need to withhold, you know. I was more or less the guinea pig that was out there trying tricks and seeing if they were possible. And then I just started seeing my equipment fail before I was failing. So I just wanted to kind of have something that could cut out kind of the middleman and just go directly from the enthusiast to the enthusiast. That's why, I mean, I ride every one of them and make sure they work, you know, and make sure I trust my life with them, you know.
For those looking for a downhill white-knuckle ride without a bike, there's mountain boarding. Ouch. Mountain boarding began in 1993, when two friends yearned for an adrenaline sport similar to snowboarding, but one that could be done in the off-season.
Skateboarding's been around a long time, and people have been going off-road on skateboards for a long time, but we were probably the first people to get serious about making a high-performance machine to carve off-road.
At first, we actually went out and tried to buy a mountain board because we figured someone must make these things. We went to a lot of department stores and sporting goods stores and found absolutely nothing. So we decided we were going to make our own product.
The original boards consisted of a deck, small off-road tires, and a suspension system.
The biggest thing that we were going for in the original designs was just the ability to carve. Carving is an integral part of surfing, skateboarding as well. Our first goal was to let's make something that you could really carve deep on. In order to do that, we knew we needed larger tires, and if we're going to get larger tires, we might as well get pneumatic tires, which are air-filled.
The advantage of off-road tires is that you can adjust the air pressure for different types of terrain. Grass, dirt, or pavement. One of the biggest innovations was a hand-operated brake. Seems like a good idea.
It's called a reverse V-brake. From a technological standpoint, it's similar to a mountain bike brake, but it works in the opposite direction. So instead of clamping down onto one center tire, it actually pushes out onto two tires.
The decks are made of fiberglass and they've got a wood core. We use a lot of aluminum right now. Everything's getting lighter.
The boards have plenty of binding system options.
We still want it to be like a skateboard to where you can push it, get in, get out real easily, but also have the ability to crank it down and really have a tight interface with the board. So when you're doing jumps and spins and flips, the board's not falling off.
I think it's kind of cool too because a lot of the places you ride, you're really riding it for the first time. No one's ever ridden it on a board. I mean, whoever rode down Pikes Peak on a board? These guys are modern day pioneers.
So thanks to technology, crazed young thrill seekers armed with imagination, creativity, plenty of guts, and a supply of bandages will continue to push the extreme sports envelope. And their exploits will continue to thrill fans and terrify parents. defying the laws of gravity, reckless or revolutionary, insanity or twisted genius. Technology and innovation give birth to the most mind-blowing and perilous sports on the planet. Now, extreme sports gadgets on Modern Marvels. These remarkable feats have in common. None of them would be possible without the specialized equipment that has evolved and improved over the years. And like life itself, it all started here, in the ocean. If there's one historical element that inspired the no-holds-barred mentality of what's now considered extreme sports, it would have to be the ancient Hawaiian sport of surfing.
Surfing has been such a huge inspiration to the world. I mean, from a little island in the Pacific, that it's influenced skiers to become snowboarders, water skiers to become wakeboarders. We got skateboarding, and these are all children of surfing.
Today, thank technology for making it possible to ride 60-foot waves with nothing but a surfboard and an iron will. Although it's not clear exactly where and when surfing began, there's no doubt that the ancient sport of hi'inalu, or wave sliding, was practiced as far back as the 2nd century AD in the area now known as the Hawaiian Islands. By carving a slab of wood from a tree and adding a bit of lateral ingenuity, the early surf pioneers turned an unfriendly element into an ocean playground.
The fascinating thing is the building of a surfboard. And when you really think about it, it's a toy. This toy had ritual, it had incredible significance to the culture because they really valued their recreational time. And as such, they valued the tools and the toys that they used, to achieve that.
The ancient Hawaiians had two types of surfboards. The alaia was a commoner's board that was short, thin, and wide. The olos were reserved for the royal class. These regal boards were longer, some measuring up to 26 feet, and much heavier, weighing approximately 150 pounds. Designed for surfing bigger waves, these boards were extremely hard to control. At the dawn of the 20th century, modern surfers took the ancient designs and started experimenting with board shapes and technology that could allow their skills to grow. In the early 30s, a curious young surfer from the mainland named Tom Blake came to Hawaii and began studying the way surfboards were built.
Tom Blake was really the first true surfboard designer and innovator. He couldn't help but looking at these boards think, do they have to be so heavy? He actually came up with a design where he built a hollow board. It was created from marine ply. It was still the same length, but they were hollow.
By introducing the world's first hollow board, Blake created a much lighter board that made surfing more accessible and gave surfers more control.
So suddenly, you had this board that was literally half the weight of the contemporary surfboard, and suddenly people realized, hey, lightness really is the key to performance in surfing. It's been the most enduring innovation in surfing, and that has been the pursuit of lightness.
This groundbreaking advancement prompted other surfboard builders to experiment with all shapes, sizes, weights, and materials. And in 1935, Blake was at the cutting edge of surfboard improvement again.
Tom Blake, so the story goes, was walking on the beach one day and he came across an overturned powerboat that had washed ashore. And there on the bottom was that little stabilizing, what was called a skeg. And he thought, if it works for a boat, maybe it'd work for a surfboard. And he prized off that skeg, went home, put it on his board, paddled right out, and surfing never was the same again.